Hello, welcome and good morning to all of you. Welcome to Unacademy IAS English. Welcome to another session of the Hindu News Analysis dated the August, that is the 2nd August 2024, 2nd September 2024. Now, before I start the discussion, what are the important articles that we will be looking at today? Today is Monday, so generally on Monday, the articles in the Hindu newspaper will be very less. That is the precise reason. What I have done is, I have taken certain articles from Indian Express as well to make it much more exhaustive and to ensure that this discussion will be sufficient for you to cover all the important current affairs articles in today's newspapers. If you are liking these initiatives, do hit the like button, and if you are yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. So, the list of the articles has 11 articles, many of them from Indian Express as well as remaining from the Hindu newspaper. And before I go forward, this month, that is on the 5th of September, we will be celebrating the Teachers' Day, and on the occasion of Teachers' Day, we have a wonderful news for all of you. For the next 7 days, you will be able to avail all our initiatives in the Unacademy app free of a cost. I repeat, for the next 7 days, you will be able to use all the initiatives that we have on the Unacademy app or the platform free of a cost. Be it the live sessions which are conducted by the top educators, or access to, let's say, the material, or access to the test series, etc. But please understand, for you to get the access free of a cost, you will have to do only one thing now, that is register. Register or enroll before September 3rd, and if you register today or enroll today, from today for the next 7 days, whatever initiatives are there on the platform, you can avail it free of a cost. For example, today starting 6 p.m. in my plus classes, I am having a discussion regarding concept of subsidies. Why there is a discussion, or let's say the friction between Government of India and the USA government regarding MSP. What do you mean by direct benefit transfer? And what do you mean by e-rupee? Not the CBDC, but the digital voucher system that has been announced by the Government of India, or announced earlier, but the usage of that has been expanded in the recently announced budget. If you are interested, please do join the session. All you need to do is simply enroll, and you can use all these sessions or attend these sessions free of a cost for the next 7 days. See you in the classroom. Let me start the discussion. The first very important article, editorial, reforming the process of judicial appointments. Reforming the process of judicial appointments. Now, what are the very important points? Listen to me carefully. In case of India, under the Constitution, there are articles, for example, Article 124, which talks about appointments of the judges to the Supreme Court. At the same time, we also have one more article which talks about appointment of judges to the High Court as well. And under the Constitution, we do, or we simply, that is the President of India, appoints judges to the High Court as well as the Supreme Court of India. Now, regarding that, there is a very interesting history. That is, there is different judgments. These are very famously referred to as first judge's case, second judge's case, third judge's case, and the most recent one in 2015, fourth judge's case. Now, what are the important points and why you should understand all of these particular concepts? Listen to me carefully. According to the Constitution, there are different structures in India. We have legislature, we have judiciary, and generally we say whatever is the function of legislature, they should not overstep that and enter into judiciary, and whatever is the function of judiciary, they should not overstep and enter into the domain of executive. And over a period of time, there has always been a friction between the government as well as the judiciary. For example, there was certain phase in the last one decade where the government of India or even other experts as well have criticized the judiciary for their judicial overreach. That is, certain judgments have been issued which are not strictly confining to the work of the judiciary, rather the judgments are more associated with the executive work. It is more associated with the executive work. For example, judgments where the Supreme Court of India is issuing orders regarding allocation of spectrum or allocation of the food grains, etc., etc. So, over a period of time, although I am giving you only few of the examples, please understand there have been multiple instances where both the judiciary as well as the executive have been at the loggerheads, where each one of them have been critical, have been overly stepping into the boundaries, or let's say has been entering into the functions of the other, let's say, part or the pillars of the system as such. So, in accordance to that, the importance of these judgments are, these judgments have been used in terms of appointments to the judiciary. And again, I'll talk about the criticisms regarding the appointments as well. Let me give you the brief of it. The first judge's case, SP Gupta versus Union of India, 1981. According to the provision of Indian Constitution, the President of India shall consult certain members of the judiciary, that is the Chief Justice of India, in terms of appointment of judges to the court. Now, in case of the first judge's case, this is called as the first judge's case, it was basically discussed, is it mandatory for the President of India to take into consideration the recommendations done by the judiciary and only stick to those recommendations. That is, let's say the judiciary has recommended that person A, B, C have to be appointed as judges to the Supreme Court. Is it compulsory for the President of India to stick to only these names? Can the President of India reject some of these names or all of these names? That was basic discussion that was taken up in the first judge's case. And the ruling of the Supreme Court went in favor, basically gave primacy to the executive, that is President of India was allowed to reject the names in the list that was sent to the President. And again in the second judge's case, that is Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India, 1993, very famously known as second judge's case. Same issue was taken up, and this time Supreme Court of India ruled basically in favor of judges themselves. That is, argument was, now whenever a list is sent for the appointments in the judiciary, the President of India will have to agree, will have to accept. The frictional point, or let's say the confusing point, was whether the term consultation, does it mean concurrence? Whether the term consultation, does it actually mean concurrence? That is, according to the Constitution, the President of India shall consult. Now, it was actually meaning, according to the Supreme Court, it would simply mean concurrence, essentially meaning when the list is sent to the President shall simply appoint. President will not have any other role in this. And when I say President, I hope you understand, right, there are various government departments also involved in that. So, it simply meant that the President of India shall not have any option now, but to simply accept the list of recommendations and simply announce, or let's say issue the order regarding their appointment into, let's say, judiciary as for example Supreme Court judges. Now again it was taken up in the third judge's case, 1998, but before going forward, in the second judge's case, along with the imposition of, let's say, mandatorily accepting the recommendation, there was the introduction of a collegium system as well. In collegium system now, along with the Chief Justice of India, we will also have two other senior most judges of Supreme Court of India. So 1+2 combination of collegium was introduced in the second judge's case. In the third judge's case, again the same reiteration was done, but now the role of collegium was actually expanded from 1+2, now it was made 1+5. 4. So essentially the Chief Justice of India along with 4 other senior most judges would recommend who will be appointed as judges to the High Court as well as the Supreme Court. Now what are the issues here? What are the problems? What are the concerns regarding this? Point number 1. The concern is that India is the only country around the world where only judges are appointing themselves. We have a system where only judges, that is let's say the collegium system, which has the CJI along with the senior most other judges, they are recommending others to be appointed as judges. So it is a system wherein judges are appointing other judges. If you look at other examples, for example, in the article they have given an example of United Kingdom, where with the amendment of 2015, that is a Constitutional Reforms Act of 2015, now they have a 15-member commission. Now they have a 15-member commission, and this 15-member commission will give recommendations. And by the way, this commission involves members from different fields, so different areas, not just only judges. So 15-member commission will recommend who should be appointed as judges at different levels in the United Kingdom. And similar system may not be the same composition, but a similar system is also present in South Africa as well, where they have Judicial Services Commission, which is again involved in giving the recommendations regarding appointment of judges. So India is the only country which has this kind of a system where judges are appointing other judges. Point number 1. Point number 2, this is not mandated, this kind of a system is not mandated under the Constitution of India. That is a second concern. Third concern is, when you talk about how the recommendations are provided, what is the process followed? The biggest concern is that the whole process has become opaque. The whole process has become opaque, that is, there is very less transparency in the system. Although very recently the Chief Justice of India has given certain clarification regarding what system they follow whenever they will send or they will choose or select who should be appointed or who should be elevated as a Supreme Court judge, etc. I will talk about it later. But general consensus amongst various experts, including former judges or the justices of Supreme Court of India, is the same thing, that there is no, right, let's say, transparency in the system. The whole process has become very opaque now. For example, in 2015 judgment, that is basically the 4 judges case now, 4th judges case, in that a constitutional bench of 5 judges, one of the justices, Justice Chalmeshwar, was critical of this particular process. He gave a dissenting judgment, and even after that also he has been very categorically clear, saying that this whole process is very opaque. A common man, or even for that matter many other people, until and unless they have a very influential position such as let's say a CJI, they will never come to know what is the actual process followed, on what basis the appointments are taken up, on what basis the recommendations are given, etc., etc. The whole process has become very opaque. And another concern regarding this process also has been raised in the name of uncle judges. Uncle judges essentially means, imagine in the collegium system there is a Supreme Court judge or a justice. The justice's relative, close or a distant relative, doesn't matter, is also under consideration to be elevated as a Supreme Court judge. There is an allegation that these judges generally push and vote in favor or argue in favor of their relatives to be pushed at a higher levels in the judiciary. So this process or this phenomenon has been referred to as a uncle judges. So non-transparency, opaqueness, it is not a constitutional mandate, and please understand, it is also a point wherein need of a transparency is required. Now against this particular practice, Government of India back in the year 2014 introduced 2 very important bills. One was the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, and the second one was NJAC Act, National Judicial Appointments Committee. NJAC Act as well as 99th Constitutional Amendment Act. The 99th Constitutional Amendment Act made certain important changes to provisions of the Indian Constitution, specifically those dealing with appointment of judges. For example, Article 124, in this certain provisions were added, amendments were introduced. And according to these amendments, henceforth, there will be a new authority which will be set up, that is NJAC, and this NJAC will give recommendations to the President regarding elevation of judges. And the composition of NJAC, according to the bill, or which became an act later, was basically the Chief Justice of India along with two senior most judges will be present in this commission. In addition to this, the central government law minister will also be there. And finally, the point of contention, this was a point of contention, two eminent persons will also be part of NJAC. This was the composition which was prescribed according to the act. The bill was introduced, it was passed by the state governments as well, and it became an act. And even before this became an act, many people approached the Supreme Court of India and asked the Supreme Court of India to look into these provisions because they would be violating the basic structure of Indian Constitution. Of course, at that point of time, the term basic structure was not used by the lawyers as such. They were basically saying that with this kind of a NJAC composition, the people can band together, that is let's say a law minister along with let's say two other eminent people can come together and veto the recommendations or let's say the appointments to be recommended by NJAC. Again, the provision was very simple. Two people can basically come together in this, that is if these two people are opposed to recommendation of somebody to be elevated, then this will be vetoed, the person shall not be recommended by NJAC. So concern was, who are these eminent people? And if these eminent people along with the law minister will veto appointment of judges to the Supreme Court, don't you think that is overreaching, executive overreaching into the domain of the judiciary? Right, so I hope you understand. So executive, legislative, judiciary, these are the three pillars. So argument was very simple, legislature will basically stretch their powers into judiciary now. Let's not allow this to happen. And initially Supreme Court of India did not take up the case because they said it is just a bill, let them pass, right now we cannot interfere. And after the bill was passed, in the next year, that is very next year, 2015, in the very next year, that is 2015, Supreme Court of India took up the case, very famously known as the Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association versus Union of India, or else fourth judge's case. So now Supreme Court of India looked at NJAC as well as the 99th Constitutional Amendment Bill, and on the basis of that the provision is violating the basic structure of the Indian Constitution, Supreme Court of India struck down both of them. I repeat, on the basis, on the arguments that these provisions or these two acts are basically violating and are leading to changes in the basic structure of Indian Constitution, both of them, that is the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act as well as the NJAC Act, both of them were struck down by the Supreme Court. Now what is the idea of a basic structure? Please understand, basic structure essentially means certain parts of the Indian Constitution which are essential, and because these are very essential, nobody should be allowed to change these essential parts of the Constitution. And who will define what is the basic structure of the Constitution? The judiciary. Supreme Court will define what is the basic structure of Indian Constitution. So based on the provisions which are there, for example, like I said earlier, the members can vote and basically veto appointment or the elevation of somebody into Supreme Court judge. And these need not be members from judiciary. Although it has a composition of let's say 1 plus 2, that is Chief Justice of India along with 2 senior most judges, even if they are favor of one person to be elevated and the remaining 2 are not in favor, then that elevation cannot be recommended. And moreover, another point of contention was, who are these eminent people? How do you define who is an eminent person? So there was a concern which was raised, these people, there is no clarity regarding who are eminent people here. It could lead to certain appointments by the government of the people who are in favor of the government of India itself, who will toe the line of government of India. So that is the precise reason these 2 were struck down by the Supreme Court of India, citing that it is going to destroy the basic structure of Indian Constitution. So this is actually what has happened in the past regarding appointment of judges, or let's say the 4 important cases regarding, right, let's say the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court of India as well as High Court of India. And the story did not get over at that point of time. Over a period of time, again there has been a discussion on whether the NJAC was right or wrong, whether judiciary is correct in basically striking down an act which wants to basically change how the appointments are going to be done. And the same question was actually raised, again not the same in the sense, a concern was raised very recently to Chief Justice of India regarding how the appointments are done, that is how members are recommended to be elevated to Supreme Court of India to work as judges. And the Chief Justice of India stated that although in the public domain there is a misconception, that everything happens arbitrarily in the collegium system. The CJI mentioned that whenever the discussions are happening in the collegium, they generally take into consideration certain parameters. It's not that they will simply pick up a name and recommend it to the President of India, absolutely no. There is a particular process that is followed, that is the Chief Justice of India mentioned these particular parameters. First one, they will always focus on merit of the judge. They will always focus on the merit of the judge who is under consideration for elevation. What has been the judgments given by the judge in the last couple of years? Right, what is the quality of the judgment, etc. Merit is very, very important. Second parameter which CJI said, which will be considered by the collegium, is the service, number of years of service or seniority principle. Seniority principle, because the CJI stated that of course it is a service, the judges are providing services, essentially how many years of service they have put in, that is a very, very important point that is generally considered whenever the recommendations are taken up. And the third very important principle or the point that the collegium takes up for elevation recommendations is inclusivity. Inclusivity, that is essentially, do we have appropriate representation of women? Do we have right representation, or let us say good representation of judges from other communities as well? But of course, CJI also stated that the third will not be having a bigger impact in the sense we cannot oversee the merit of a judge, and just because we want to go for inclusiveness, we cannot simply ignore this judge and take up another judge. For example, CJI stated the judges belonging to the other class, that is the women justices right now who are there, who are presiding over, let us say, the cases in the Supreme Court, they are equally or more qualified compared to all the other judges. So the merit will not be suffering, merit will be primary, but they will also ensure that there is some inclusivity in the combination of judges who are recommended for elevation to be appointed as Supreme Court justices. So argument in this article is simple, we need to revert back to NJAC, because the NJAC is a very good system, it was much more representative system, and much more importantly, understand the point here, because so many frictional points are existing between the judiciary as well as the legislature now, legislature and executive. Many of the times recommendations have been sent by the judiciary, but there is a delay in the appointment of judges. There is a delay in the appointment of judges, And whenever there is a delay in the appointment of judges, one of the outcomes of this will be the number of cases which are filed, which are pending at the High Court level, at the Supreme Court level, they will keep on increasing. And I will take up one more article. Yesterday and day for yesterday, there was a 2-day conference regarding judiciary. There again the issue of pending cases has been discussed. So when there is a friction like this, obviously as a result of or as the outcome of such frictions, appointments might be delayed. And when the appointments are delayed, it will increase the burden on the judiciary in terms of increasing number of cases. Done? So these are certain important points mentioned in the article. Please be careful. Let me go to the next article. How Ola's Desi strategy ruffled the feathers of Mapmyindia. Now what is the issue all about? Listen to me carefully. Very recently, Ola Electricals has debuted in the market. That is essentially they have gone for an IPO, initial public offering. Their shares are listed. In fact, after listing against many expectations, the shares are performing very well in terms of market prices of the shares. But the article discusses much bigger concept rather than talking about only the Ola here. The article discusses the Swadeshi versus Videshi campaign. Is it a right move? Should it have an impact on the Indian economy? As a customer, as a consumer, should we always focus on either Swadeshi or Videshi? Because if you are hearing the statements or listening to the statements which is given by the CEO, Mr. Agarwal, one of the common elements that he generally hammers upon is the concept of Swadeshi. That is, earlier he criticized the practices of LinkedIn and stated that there is a need for a platform in India. He launched a Krutrim, which is again a competitor, right, domestic version, a competitor to ChatGPT. He is arguing in favor of, right, let's say electric vehicles in India, which are produced by Ola. In very recent, let's say one of the meetings, in fact that is circulated widely across various social platforms as such. He basically said, right, Ola is for India, and others, whereas right, a company such as Tesla, which also manufactures electric vehicles, Tesla is only for rich countries such as USA and Ola is for rest of the other countries. So argument is this a right strategy? Is it going to have an impact on the economy, etc.? So Swadeshi versus Videshi. Please understand, the company Ola or Mr. Agarwal has raised a lot of funds at a valuation of $1 billion, and he has launched a new initiative, new type of service called as a Krutrim Cloud Services. And this cloud services, he says, will be a competitor to Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud and Amazon Web Services. Right? These are cloud computing services providers. But the argument which has been put forward by various experts is these other service providers such as AWS or Google Cloud, etc., provide lot of features to the companies which will subscribe to their cloud computing services, right, and competing with them in terms of pricing, in terms of quality of services will be very, very difficult. How so? Let me give you one example. Initially he said one year free, right, membership or services will be provided, so much credits will be provided, etc., etc. But argument is, when you subscribe to a cloud computing service, cloud computing essentially where everything will be done through the internet. For example, let's say storage of data or right, access to data, modeling of many of these, etc. Everything will be provided online through internet itself. That is essentially a concept of a cloud computing services. If you take one example, why it will be very difficult for Krutrim to compete with other competitors or other companies, global companies, is that they have a better technology, but other than that, in terms of, let's say, cost of the services, in India, the electricity cost is very, very high. Compared to other countries, the cost of electricity in India is higher. And the argument is very simple. When you subscribe to these cloud computing services, you need the data collection centers because of a back-end support requirement. And these data centers, they will consume lot of electricity. And I hope you understand, electricity consumption will be very, very high at these centers. and when the electricity consumption is very high, cost of the services provided by them will be determined or will be determined by one of the very important factors, that is the cost of electricity. And in case of India, the cost of electricity is higher compared to other countries. So how will they be able to offer cost effective services? Let's say after 1 year, it is doubtful, because for 1 year it is free of a cost, but after 1 year, what if they introduce a pricing cost or a pricing mechanism which is much higher compared to their competitors? That is very difficult to confine to. That is the first very important point. Second very important point is Ola Maps versus Google Maps. After launching Krutrim, the next war that he launched was against Google Maps. That is, he announced in the X platform that now Ola Maps will be launched, and instead of being reliant on a Videshi technology such as Google Maps, we should start adopting Swadeshi technology, that is Ola Maps. But having said so, soon after the launch of Ola Maps, a controversy erupted. What was the controversy? There is one more domestic company, Mapmyindia. Mapmyindia, and the Mapmyindia company alleged that Ola company has violated certain agreements. They have copied the technology, or let's say certain licensed product of theirs, reverse engineered it, and they have created their product now. So they raised concerns and they said they will take action, legal actions against Ola company. And Ola company on their part also have clarified that whatever has been announced or whatever statements have been given by Mapmyindia, there is no truth in it. And they also have sent a legal notice to Mapmyindia, and they are still waiting for the reply from Mapmyindia. But at this point of time, because of such a controversy, UPSC might look at it and say, okay, concept of GPS, concept of mapping, concept of global positioning system becomes relevant, and they might end up asking question on concept of, let's say, geo-positioning or tri-locating in the UPSC civil services. So whenever you talk about mapping, for example, if you are traveling from point A to point B, either on a bike or as a pillion rider with your friend, or as a rider or as a driver in a car, I am pretty sure most of the times you will use Google Maps to navigate, to basically move from one point to another point, either within the same area or out of your district, out of your state as well. Now what is the technology? What is the use of it? And do we have any alternative to, let's say, Google Maps in India, etc.? These are the points of importance or the concepts that are relevant for civil services now. So please understand, whenever you talk about navigation, the important systems across the world which will provide global navigation satellite system, essentially these are constellation of satellites, huge number of satellites which are there in the space, which will keep on collecting data and sending data which will help you to navigate. So the important ones across the globe are USA is a GPS, which most of us use. Second one is Europe's Galileo. Russia has a GLONASS system. China has a BeiDou system. So these are the important ones which are majorly used across the world. But in addition to this, there are also certain regional navigation systems. For example, we have Navik. This particular system, which has been launched by ISRO, is operational now. But please understand, in terms of usage, it is very limited to Indian subcontinent, very much limited to Indian subcontinent. So argument here is, what is the importance of this? What is the kind of technology? Who are the participants, etc.? The article simply discusses important concepts here. Let's go one by one. First one, generally in order to map all of this or get this, the navigation mapping online like this, the companies use huge amount of resources. For example, you must have seen in your locality or in other videos, etc., there are certain cars which are fitted with certain technology, and these cars will keep on moving from one area to another area, and this car basically is collecting the data from all the sources, that is what kind of a street it is, does it have an alternative street or a parallel street, how many houses are there, etc., etc. All of this data is collected, and along with the satellite, along with the inputs from the satellite plus inputs from users such as you and me, the whole navigation system will be operating. The whole navigation system operates based on that. Right, so these are certain important points mentioned here. In addition to this, make note of one more point. In case of India, which are the companies which are providing licensed mapping products in India? Licensed mapping product, licensed navigation products in India. The first one is Mapmyindia. The first one is Mapmyindia. Very old company as such, but please understand, most of the market share is dominated by the second company, that is basically the Google Maps. Most of the market share is dominated by Google Maps. Apart from this, there is also one more, that is OpenStreetMaps. OpenStreetMaps. So these are the three companies, or let's say three service providers regarding navigation in India. Please make a note of this, can be asked in the prelims as well. Okay. So these are certain things, but before I go forward, please understand, as a consumer, as a customer, most of the times, not all the times, we are more worried about the quality of services. We are more worried about quality of services, whether the services is provided by a domestic company or a foreign company. Yes, there have been certain instances where the idea of Swadeshi versus Videshi has worked out. It has actually worked out, and in certain years it has worked out. But if you simply look at the longer tenure like this, in the past also there have been lot of times when the same argument has been put forward by many companies to push their products for consumption in the market. For example, earlier when Uber entered into the Indian market, Ola was worried about it, same kind of an argument was pushed forward. When Amazon entered into India, Flipkart also tried to push the same argument, that is, we are Indian company, we should be protected, we should be allowed to grow, we should be protected from these kind of foreign investors, etc., etc. But please understand, at the end of the day, you or me as a consumer, we are more worried, we will become economist at that point of time rather than a nationalist. We are more worried about, for every rupee that I am spending, am I getting good quality good or a services in return or not? Whether the service provider or good provider, whether it is an Indian company or a foreign company, most of the time it is immaterial to me. And that has been the criticism regarding the approach that has been followed by many companies, including Ola company. Many of the customers who have invested their hard earned money in terms of purchasing, let's say, electric vehicles, two-wheeler electric vehicles, no doubt, quality of the products is good, no doubt, but the customers are unhappy with, let's say, the services which are provided after the sales is done. That is, let's say, the repair services, or let's say the customer services after the sales is done. So many of these customers have raised a concern regarding the quality. So if a company wants to be, let's say, wants to have more customers, wants to have a higher market share, they should always focus, in addition to selling, post service sales as well. Okay. Now let me go to the third article here, opening up the field. Right, one more editorial in Indian Express. I felt this article was very relevant even to those who are appearing for this year's mains examination. That's the reason I picked it up. What is the point? What are the areas they are discussing? Let's go one by one. Point number one, how many of you know, please understand this, how many of you have heard of this? That is, India exports water. India exports water. For example, there was one survey which was conducted which stated that in the last one decade, India has exported somewhere around 500 ton liters of water. India has exported somewhere around 500 ton liters of water. Now you will be wondering, sir, how? Are we manufacturing that in a Bisleri bottle and we are exporting? Are you talking about that? Absolutely no. Whenever they talk about export of water and import of water, they are talking about agriculture exports. There are certain agriculture exports which are cultivated using lot of water. These have lot of moisture as well, essentially cereals. These are produced and these are exported, and on the other hand, we import lot of pulses in India. We import lot of pulses into India despite being the highest producer as well as the highest consumer. That's the irony now, right? Listen to me. India is the highest producer of pulses in the world. India is the highest consumer of pulses in the world, and India is also the highest importer of pulses in the world. We produce, we consume, at the same point of time we import. So, amount of water that is present in case of cereals which we export is very, very high, as a result of which we end up exporting, they will use a term virtual water. We end up exporting virtual water to the rest of the world. This is point number 1. Point number 2, in case of India, the government of India has a policy by the name of MSP, minimum support price, MSP, minimum support price. Now, MSP is announced for multiple crops, 23 crops, but out of that, the main procurement that is done by government of India through Food Corporation of India, the main procurement is centered around paddy and wheat. Paddy and wheat, again I am saying main procurement. It does not mean that they do not procure anything else apart from it. They procure pulses also, they procure, right, let us say millets as well, but the main procurement or most of the procurement is centered around the paddy and wheat, because the government has to run public distribution system. The problem here is, because the government will announce MSP, pay MSP, according to various surveys, the returns that the farmers earn on the cultivation of cereals is much higher compared to the returns that the farmers earn on pulses. Is it okay? I will repeat the statement. A farmer will cultivate, let us say paddy, sell it to the government under MSP. The amount of returns, percentage of returns that the farmer is earning here, it is much higher compared to the returns that the farmer earns in the cultivation and the sale of pulses or other crops for that matter. Because of this, the cultivation of cereals such as paddy is very, very high in India. And what is the problem? Because of cultivation, higher cultivation of such crops, these are water intensive crops. These are water intensive crops. For example, paddy, sugarcane, these are very much water intensive or water guzzling plants. They consume lot of water, and as a result of this, in many of the regions, the consumption of water for agriculture production has increased, water levels have fallen down, which has become a cause of concern now. So, what should be the solution? What should we do? We should somehow shift the farmers from the cultivation of these crops to less water intensive crops, to water guzzling, to less water intensive crops. We should promote the consumption, we should promote the production of the production in the farming sector. How can it be done? Because as a farmer, the moment I see that I get better returns in the cultivation of paddy, I will keep on cultivating paddy. How should we shift the cultivation then? Answer is given in this article. Editorial, very, very important. What are the answers? Point number 1. There is a scheme which has been, or a program which has been announced by the Punjab government, where they are basically saying that if the farmers will shift from the cultivation of cereals to other crops, I repeat, if they will shift away from production of cereals such as paddy to other crops, the government will be incentivizing with amount of 17,500 rupees per hectare. The government will be incentivizing such farmer at a price or at the amount of 17,500 per hectare. This is extended to 5 hectares. It is extendable up to 5 hectares, which means if I am a farmer now, if I shift my cultivation away from paddy to, let us say, pulse cultivation, automatically I will be given 17,500 per hectare from the state government. This, the article says, is a very, very good initiative. It is a very good initiative. In fact, if the governments want more shift like this, more shifting to other forms of cultivation, incentive could be increased. Incentive should be increased to a higher number. Center and state should formulate an agreement, or let us say a sponsored scheme where center will allocate more funding, states will also participate, and farmers will keep on shifting from cultivation of paddy to other crops. And the advantage is simple: cultivation of other crops such as pulses will increase, means pulses will fix nitrogen, they will increase the fertility of the soil, first one. Second one, Government of India is burdened to keep on procuring because the production is very high. I hope you understand. Production of cereals is very high, market prices will become volatile now, government will intervene and keep on purchasing from the market. So the burden of Government of India in terms of procurement will come down. Third one, because of the cultivation of these cereals, the consumption of fertilizers is also very high. And because the fertilizer consumption is very high, the subsidies provided, the subsidy burden on the government is also very high. We can reduce the subsidy burden. And fourth important point here, the authors basically say, and the author is a very well known expert by the way, Mr. Ashok Gulati, very well known expert. Mr. Ashok Gulati and Reena Singh argue that the government should involve, right, or let us say basically ask NAFED to procure more and more pulses from the market, so that there is certain amount of prices that could be guaranteed for the farmer when they cultivate pulses. It should not happen that the farmer will shift the cultivation to pulses now, they will receive the incentive from the government, but when they cultivate, just like one farmer, many farmers have cultivated, supply increases, market prices will crash and the farmers will suffer because of that. So what can be done? Provide protection. Provide protection. How? Procure more. Procurement should be increased. Right? Go for more and more procurement, so that when the farmers will sell the crop, there is certain guaranteed price that we can offer to the farmers in the form of MSP. So if the governments across India, multiple states will start adopting such kind of a policy, we will not only ensure that soil fertility will be protected, we will ensure that the subsidy burden on the government will be lesser. Third one, we will be able to control the import of pulses that we are doing. Fourth one, we will also be able to ensure the income of the farmers will be protected. So these are some of the recommendations that have been done in this article. Use these recommendations, use these to recommend how to go for a crop diversification in India and have multiple benefits of this crop diversification. Done? So in context of this, let me give you an MCQ assignment number 20 now. Consider the following statements regarding fertilizers. I have given 3 statements here. Please go through all the 3 statements and do let me know what is the answer to this particular question. How many of the statements are true? Now before I go forward, MCQ assignment number 18 yesterday, the Saturday assignment. Consider the following statements regarding GDP. India's GDP is larger when measured under nominal exchange rate compared to PPP exchange rate. India's GDP is larger when measured under nominal exchange rate compared to PPP exchange rate. Statement is wrong. Okay, statement is wrong. In case of PPP exchange rate, India's GDP is much larger. It is somewhere around $10 trillion. Whereas in case of a nominal exchange rate, it is somewhere around $3.7 trillion. First statement is wrong. India is the third largest when measured in PPP exchange rate and fifth largest when measured in nominal exchange rate. Yes, this statement is correct. China has the largest GDP, that is at PPP exchange rate. Yes, this statement is also correct. So at PPP exchange rate, China is the largest. At nominal exchange rate, USA is the largest. So 2 statements are true. Right option for this question will be option B. Only 2 of the statements are correct. Okay. Next, assignment number 19. Consider the following statements regarding PM Shri initiative. It is a central sector scheme. Wrong. It is a sponsored scheme. 60:40. Schools will be developed as green schools. Yes. What do you mean by green schools? For example, usage of electricity, right? Cultivation of certain, right? Let's say crops, etc., etc. Right? So planting. When I say crops, planting, etc. So these schools will be developed as model schools, that is green schools. Statement 2 is correct. These will be developed and maintained by the central government till 2047. No, government has announced only for 5 years. After that, it will be handed over to the state governments or union territories. So one statement is correct. Right option for the question will be option A. Only one of them is correct. Now, descriptive answer writing assignment. With the changing dynamics in India and abroad, the monetary policy making is becoming increasingly challenging. Elaborate 10 marker 150 words. Sir, what should we write? How to model this kind of a question, etc. I will give you a hint here. Use these articles. I have given multiple articles. One article from Economic Times, climate change, how it is becoming an emerging variable in monetary policy making. One. Second article which I used earlier from Financial Express, temperature is the most important determinant of food inflation, how this will make monetary policy challenging, you need to write it. And third article, have a look at this, from Business Line, global volatility will impact MPC decisions. Global volatility will impact MPC, Monetary Policy Committee decision making process. So, 3 articles I have given. You can use the information from all the 3 articles and write an answer for just 150 words. Done? That is the assignment to you. Next article, culture of adjournment of caste of cases in courts has to change, a statement given by President of India. Please understand, very recently a two-day national conference of district judiciary was conducted. 2-day national event. On the first day, the Prime Minister of India spoke and he argued in favor of having a very quick decision making process in terms of punishing the people who are committing violence against women. On the second day, the President of India spoke and she used a term, and this is a new term by the way, she used a term by the name black coat syndrome. Black coat syndrome. What is the idea of black coat syndrome here? Please listen to me carefully. Right now, one of the criticisms that you can levy against judiciary is that the number of cases which are pending at all the levels are very, very high. For example, at Supreme Court level, we have more than 80,000 cases which are pending. At the High Court level, right, we have around 61 lakh plus cases which are pending. And at the district court level, there are more than 4.5 crore cases which are pending. So, the number of cases which are pending at levels of judiciary are very, very high, very huge. And there are concerns, there are issues because of which the pending cases are very high in India. We will understand that in some time. Now, the President of India uses a term black coat syndrome to basically raise certain concern regarding the number of cases which are pending in the judiciary. What is the argument here? Before understanding black coat syndrome, understand one more, white coat syndrome. White coat syndrome. What do you mean by white coat syndrome? I am pretty sure some of you might have experienced this, or you should have seen this. When people will approach, let's say, a hospital, that is a doctor specifically, when they are in a hospital and their blood pressure is checked, at that point of time, when the doctors are right sitting or standing and they know that they are in a hospital and they know blood pressure is being checked, suddenly their BP will be higher than normal, and this is essentially called as a white coat syndrome, because the people, when they are in the hospitals, they are generally nervous, they are worried, they are afraid as to what has happened to them, and because the doctors are conducting a procedure, their blood pressure will slightly go up, which would have been normal, but now it has slightly gone up. So, this is called as a white coat syndrome, and on the lines of white coat syndrome, now the President of India uses a term called as black coat syndrome. Black coat syndrome, essentially representing what is happening in the judiciary, because in the judiciary, the judges, the lawyers, etc., all of them are wearing black robes, that is black coats. So, the President of India used the term black coat syndrome. What is this idea of a black coat syndrome? The number of cases which are pending at different levels of judiciary, as already mentioned, are very, very high. Now, let us say there is a person who belongs to a village and the village is far away from the district court or a high court, and now if the judges will keep on adjourning, the case day after date or date after date, I will borrow the phrase of Sunny Deol in a movie, Tariq pe Tariq. if the judges will keep on practicing that adjournment, obviously the poor people will have to travel back all the way to the villages, again come back to the place that is where the court is located after a certain number of days, again the case is adjourned, go back, again come. So the argument which has been put forward by the President of India, which is absolutely correct, is that the poor people, especially the poor people who are located in the villages, they look at judiciary and they treat the judges as if these are gods. But because the judiciary follows the process of adjourning the cases, keep on postponing the date, multiple hearings will be conducted, etc., the cost or the trauma that will be incurred, will be experienced by the poor people will be very, very high. And if the date is nearby, if the next date of hearing comes nearby, automatically the poor person will be worried about it. He has to spend money, they will have to travel all the way to a particular place, again come back, etc. It becomes a trauma, a financial burden on the people. That has been characterized as black coat syndrome by the President of India. Done? Right. So, this is one very important point. Second very important point here, it's not that, right, because the argument should not be only on one side. It's not that judiciary is not doing anything. And I hope you understand the point as well. When the judges will keep on, right, having multiple hearings, there is a particular reason behind it. Documentation may not be ready. All the people may not be present at the same point of time. The judiciary will also require certain time to absorb the information given to them, etc., etc. There are multiple reasons, valid reasons, some of them, as a result of which adjournments are announced by the courts. Having said so, are there certain trivial reasons where adjournments are given? Of course, yes, there are multiple examples of that as well, where one of the parties will purposely delay, right, the process to be conducted in the courts. So that is also present. But again understand this, it's not that judiciary is not doing anything to address this particular issue. For example, the Chief Justice of India, I will come back to this, don't worry. The Chief Justice of India spoke about certain important points. Point number one, the Chief Justice of India says, now is the right time to go for a national process of recruitment for the judiciary. Right now is the right time to go for recruitment for judiciary at the national level, that is specifically for district courts. For district courts. Why? The vacancies for judicial level post, vacancies for the judicial level post is around 28% and the non-judiciary post is around 27% at a district level. So, if you want to increase the efficiency of the judiciary, you will have to look at all of this, right. Increase the, right, let us say hiring, make it at a national practice, have a national process for it, so that the recruitment will be done and the post will be appointed very, very fast. That is a first point. Second point, Supreme Court of India had set up a 3-member committee. That is, basically understand this 3-member committee has given a 3-step process. It has recommended a 3-step process. In the 3-step process, they have recommended that at the district level, a committee has to be set up, which will basically find out which are the long pending cases, what has happened to these cases, what is the process of documentation in these cases, etc. So, a committee at district level should be set up. Second step is, they will have to identify the cases based on the duration for which they are pending. Is it pending for less than 10 years, 10 to 20 years, 20 to 30 years and above 30 years. In fact, this became very important for a point, very simple point. Very recently, a judgment was issued in one of the cases where the issue on which the case was filed is 32-year-old issue. 32-year-old incident, on that the case has been filed and order has been issued on 20th August. Such a huge delay, and that was also mentioned, again not the case per se, but the point was mentioned by the President, where she said the whole generation has passed, and after that we are coming out with judgments. Huge delay. So, second step is, right, have classification like this, and the third step which is supposed to start in the beginning of 2025, January to June 2025, certain cases will be taken up by judiciary and they will try to resolve these cases. A 3-step process already has been recommended by a committee which was set up by the Supreme Court earlier. The committee had 3 justices, that is Justice Oka, Justice Nath and Justice Datta. So 3 justice committee was set up and the recommendations have been provided. Point number 3, Supreme Court of India in the last month itself conducted Lok Adalat, which is essentially an informal system where cases have been taken up and cleared. In a span of 5 working days, more than 1,000 cases have been cleared by the Supreme Court of India under Lok Adalat. And that's a precise reason why the Chief Justice of India argued in favor of mediation, argued in favor of these kind of systems where the cases can be closed much faster and in an informal manner. So these are some of the things that have been discussed in the article and recommended by the Chief Justice of India in order to clear the high number of pending cases in the judiciary. In addition to this, please add the information which is given in this article as well. This article appeared in Indian Express, right, one of the opinion page articles. After expressing her anguish over Kolkata rape murder case, can the president nudge the system? Can the president push the system in the right way? Because one point has been very clear here, a lot of discussion is political in nature, don't worry about it. A very important point which is mentioned by the author here is, a lot of times there is always a discussion when such gruesome incidents will happen, there is always a discussion that we should have, let's say, capital punishment for the rapist. Whether to have or not, there is argument in favor, argument against as well. Should we go for castrations of these, right, let's say, perpetrators? There can be arguments in both the sides, but the author simply says, rather than always focusing on one area, why do we not focus on efficient implementation of the provisions which are already there in the place? I will repeat the statement. Rather than focusing only on this, why not focus on other areas? For example, efficient implementation of the policies which are already there in the place. For example, after the Nirbhaya incident, after that particular issue happened, the government of India set up Nirbhaya fund. There was a committee which was set up and a fund also has been set up, Nirbhaya fund. The government keeps on allocating funds under Nirbhaya fund. Author simply says, so far not even half of the Nirbhaya funds have been utilized by the government. Not even half of the funds have been utilized by the government of India. So why not focus on these as well, rather than focusing on something else which is not implemented as of now. And to implement the other things, you will take a lot of time. So why not focus on the things which are already there in place, increase its efficiency, right? So this is a very important point which has been mentioned here, and this article basically again talks about President of India. Couple of days ago, President of India in a speech stated that enough is enough. Lot of cases are happening, lot of incidents are happening where violence is being committed against women. We need to address this particular issue. So that was the essence of the speech given by the president earlier. Done? So please incorporate this point as well whenever you are talking about, let's say, violence against women, what can be done, etc., etc. Okay, next article. Are lie detector tests legally valid? Now some of you might be thinking, sir, what is this? You have given a picture of a web series by the title Shaker Home. You want us to see that? Are you being given money to promote it? What is it? Absolutely no. Please understand, there is a very recent web series that was launched, or that was available, or that is available by the way, on the Jio app by the name of Shaker Home. The moment I read this article, I was reminded of a scene in that particular series. But again, I know many of you will simply say, sir, this is a rip-off of, right, let's say another very famous series by the name of, right, Holmes itself. But again, don't worry, right, whether that is this or this is that, that is not the point of contention here, right? It's an adaptation, very clear. But the point that I'm trying to make here is, the hero in this web series gives a very interesting statement, that is, to lie is an art. To lie is an art. There are certain physical characteristics, certain manifestations that you will exhibit, which will basically showcase that a person is lying. For example, if the person is sweating, if the person has nervous tics such as let's say shaking of the hands, and if the pupils are dilated, again none of us, right, you or me, we can find out whether the pupils of all the people are dilated or not, but yes, right, let's say profuse sweating, etc., these are nervous tics as such. So that point I want to connect with this article. Are lie detectors legally valid? Understand the contention here. Whenever there are cases, right, let's say certain crimes have been committed, you will try to find out whether the alleged person, a person who has been alleged to have committed the crime, we will try to find out whether he is lying or not using certain tests. The three very important tests are: one, narco analysis, second one is a polygraph test, and the third one is brain mapping, and these are collectively referred to as DDT, that is a deception detection test. DDT. What is this deception detection test? Very simple. Under these tests, for example, narco analysis, there is a liquid sodium pentothal, which is injected into the person, and please understand, it is said that this liquid or this chemical will reduce the inhibitions. Generally when we talk, we have a tendency to lie. Many of us lie, including me by the way, many of us lie. And whenever this, right, a truth serum, this is also known as a truth serum, when it is injected, the person's, right, ability to speak truth will increase. The inhibitions which will hold us back from speaking the truth will be reduced, the shields will go down, and the idea is the person might end up spilling the beans or talking about the truth as well. So that is basically the idea of a narco analysis, very, very famous in India in multiple cases. For example, I am pretty sure all of you have heard of this person, Mr. Abdul Karim Telgi. His video of a narco analysis became very viral even before the concept of viral videos was introduced. That back in the last decade, it became very, very viral. Narco analysis, polygraph test, certain scanners, or let's say certain the lines are attached to, let's say, the hand, right, the chest area, etc., and questions are asked, and the change in the heartbeat, the perspiration of the person, or let's say changes in certain other, let's say, behavior tics are actually measured, and that is seen in a graph which is called as basically polygraph test. And the third one is a brain mapping. There is a particular wave in the brain which is called as a P300 wave. P300 wave. In case of brain mapping, generally either the sounds are made to be heard by this person, we will make the person hear the sound or watch the video or see the pictures, and when the person sees the pictures, the brain activity will be mapped, and which is basically the mapping of P300 waves. It is also used to find out whether the person knows regarding this or not. So these are the different deception detection tests. Some of you might be thinking, sir, why are you talking about this? Is there any relevance to civil services examination? My dear, from the last couple of weeks, the CBI has taken up the investigation into the Kolkata murder case, doctor murder case. And in this, right, investigation, the CBI has approached a Kolkata court, has sought approval, permission from the Kolkata court to conduct the test, that is the deception detection test of the alleged perpetrators in the case, or those who have been arrested in the case. That is the reason these three are very much in the news. Please be very, very careful. Now please understand two important points in association with this, two very important points. One, are these legally valid? Can you conduct these particular tests? Are they legally valid? That is the first point of discussion. Second one is, how reliable are these tests? How reliable are these? For example, in case of a polygraph test, We measure the change in the heartbeat. Correct, we basically measure the change in the heartbeat. There have been multiple test surveys which have been conducted which distinctively or conclusively prove that perspiration, that is a sweating, change in the breathing pattern, change in the heartbeat is not a distinct characteristic of a person who is lying. We do not exhibit this only when we are lying. No. For example, every one of you will agree to me with this. When you go for a civil service examination, at the time of they issuing or they giving a question paper, don't you think a lot of you will be nervous? You will be, right, some of you people will be shaking your hands like this with nervousness. Some of you will be sweating, and basically that will happen because the UPSC examinations are conducted, prelims examinations are conducted during summer. That is natural, but even if it was conducted in winter, I hope you understand, many of you would be sweating because of your nervousness. Don't you think if I take your heartbeat check, at that point of time your heartbeat will be very high? Of course, yes. So the point is very simple here. Are these tests very reliable to find out whether a person is lying? Argument is, in lot of cases, no. Reason being, there are many instances where we exhibit the same characteristic that a person who is lying will also exhibit. And in many of the cases, it has been proven that the people can be trained to defeat the test. In the polygraph test, a person can be trained. I am pretty sure you must have seen this in multiple spy series, etc., where a person is trained how to defeat the polygraph test if at all he is caught by an enemy, etc., etc. So that is one point. Second point is, are they legally valid? And that is where the Supreme Court judgment becomes very, very important. Are they legally valid? Please understand, before 2010, these tests were very, very frequently conducted, were favorites of the judiciary. Favorites in the sense, the judiciary in multiple judgments favored conducting such type of a test, even if the person who is involved in this, that is on whom we are conducting the test, even if they do not give a consent, even then we conducted the test. The judiciary favored this. But in the year 2010, there is a very important Supreme Court judgment in the case of Selvi versus State of Karnataka. Selvi versus State of Karnataka, where the Supreme Court of India cited two very important articles of Indian Constitution and imposed certain restrictions or conditions regarding the deception detection test. What are the articles? That is Article 21 and Article 20. Article 21 and Article 20. That is basically Article 20, Section 3 talks about self-incrimination, and Article 21 talks about the liberty, right to life. So argument of the Supreme Court of India was, no, you cannot force a person to undergo the deception detection test. For example, narco analysis, polygraph test, you cannot force a person to undergo that. You will have to take the consent of the person. And even when the person gives a consent, try to see if you can get the consent of the person in front of a judicial magistrate. And once the consent is given and you conduct this particular test and the person ends up giving certain information to you. Let us say, for example, information regarding a knife which was used to kill a person was revealed in the test. Information regarding a gun which was used to murder a person was given during the test. That confession itself is not admissible. The confession itself is not admissible. You cannot simply say the person admitted to using a gun. You cannot use that to convict the person. But what you can do is, you can use the information, get the murder weapon, find out where the knife is hidden, retrieve the murder weapon, and then you can use the weapon to have the person convicted. That is a very, very important point. So Supreme Court of India said, voluntarily, with the consent, voluntarily, if they give out information, you can use that information to retrieve the weapon, retrieve the proof, use the proof to hold the conviction. But apart from that, if something is told during this stage, that is, let us say I am not in census now, because let us say the narco analysis is being conducted. At that point of time, right? If the person will prompt me, because I'm in a sedated position now, if the person will prompt, I might end up giving some wrong information. They cannot hold me accountable for that, and they cannot convict me because of that. And there have been cases where people have been brutally beaten, have been forced to convict something when such tests are conducted. So, Supreme Court of India's judgment in the year 2010 talks about, right, violation of these fundamental rights, and has issued directives when such, right, deception detection techniques or tests can be used. Okay. So, this is one more article, please be very careful. Next, I will club two important articles. Labour issues highlighted in Hema report got no attention. This appeared in the Hindu newspaper, and the second article is from the Indian Express. In fact, in Hindu also it was discussed yesterday. The panel has flagged in another state now. The film industry from another state is getting engulfed in the Me Too movement in another state. That is, a panel has found that in the Telugu film industry, same kind of issues are also found. Same kind of issues. And the irony of the situation is, even this report is many years old now. Just like Hema committee report, this is also old report, nothing, it's not a new report, it was not set up very recently, it was set up many years ago, and the state government had not revealed the report, has not made the report public. Now there are calls that even this report should be made public. Now let me discuss in a much bigger way, understand this carefully. Let us look at a bird's eye view here, let us have a bird's eye view, because point number one, both of these reports, and in future if any reports will be made public from other industries as well, definitely yes, there will be certain instances where women have alleged of sexual harassment, and it's important matter, very grave matter, action should be taken and measures should be implemented, no doubts regarding that. But the argument of many of the experts is that generally when such reports are made public, certain industry or certain area will be targeted, and only one of the matter will be the focus, that is the sexual harassment will be the only matter of focus. As already mentioned, I hope you understand. Is it relevant? Of course yes. Should we have measures to protect women? Of course yes. Should action be taken? Again a big yes. But that should not be the only one outcome out of such reports. Then you will ask me, sir, what are the other outcomes? I will talk about Hema committee report itself. Hema committee report also talked about other two very important issues. For example, pay gaps. For example, pay gaps. There is a huge pay gap that is existing in the industry, not only between the heroes and heroine, but also between other people who are working on the set. That is also very relevant. The pay gap, it's found between the actress and actresses. Pay gap is there. That should also be a point of concern. But in addition to that, there is a huge pay gap that is existing between or amongst the workers who are working in the industry. And much more worrisome is that a lot of these workers are made to work overtime, for which money is not paid. For which money is not paid. For many of these workers on the set, the work starts in the morning 6 a.m. goes on till 12 a.m. or goes on till 2 a.m. etc. So almost 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day, these people are made to work. Point number one. Point number two, there is no written contract between the producer as well as these workers, no written contract. Point number three, despite working more than 9 hours, for more than 9 hours, no overtime is actually paid to them. No overtime is actually paid to them. And in many of the cases, it has been found that when they are asked to do work, the person from the producer will call them, ask them to do this kind of work etc. for next 1 month etc. When it is a time to pay money, a lot of times because there is no written contract, no written agreement here, they will end up receiving very small amount of money. Now some of you will say, sir, why are they not protesting? Why are they not simply stopping the work? My dear, these are informal workers. where do you want them to go to work now? There is no available work. And second, even if they protest, same committee report, I will take HEMA committee report, the unionization, that is the second point I want to discuss here. The gatekeeping by unions, the unionizations, it is so strong, it is made up of these kind of people, again not all of them, let us say again some of them, maybe some of them. So, it is not that the union does not know that all of this is happening. So, the union will basically bar them from working in other projects. They will not issue worker permits or working cards to these actors, actresses, or let us say the supporting cast, or even the people who are working on the set, etc. They will not allow them to work in any other projects, right. So, the first issue is the pay gap, that has to be addressed. Second issue is the role of the unions must be revisited now. The role of the unions, because in many of the cases, be it Telugu industry or be it, right, let us say even the Kerala Malayalam industry, earlier incidences have been reported. Incidences have been reported. In fact, the HEMA committee report categorically says the internal committees which are supposed to protect women, whenever such cases are filed, whenever such incidences are filed like this, they were there only for the namesake. No such protection was given by these, right. So, union working, union functioning has to be revised now, has to be looked at. That is the second very important issue. And third one, working conditions. Working conditions, the working conditions have to be improved. And again, I hope you understand, do not restrict these points only to the film industry. You can use these points to represent situation in many other industries as well. Working conditions. In many of the cases when the women were interviewed, the women reported that there is not even a proper bathroom facilities when they want to take a short break. Same common facilities for everybody who is working. What if the woman is a pregnant woman? What if they want certain amount of privacy, which is their right by the way? But these kind of facilities are not provided by the producers on the set. And if you are wondering, sir, why they do not follow all of this? Reason is profitability. Cut down the cost, reduce the cost, so that your profitability will start increasing automatically, right. Contain the expenditures. So, these are some of the other things that you need to remember, in addition to, again I am reiterating the point here, sexual harassment, it is a big issue, no doubt, action should be taken there, but let us not restrict the outcome of these reports only to one point. There are other areas as well that we need to focus upon. Done. So, two articles, labour issue regarding the HEMA committee report, and one more panel issue in the Telugu film industry or a cinema industry is causing a problem now. Okay, done. Next, net GST receipts growth slips to 6.5%. Again, do not memorize all the data here, just certain important points. Point number one, they are using the term net GST. What do you mean by net GST? GST totally collected minus the refunds provided, that is basically a net GST. Net GST receipt growth rate has fallen down to 6.5%, that is a cause of concern. Reason being, very recently we discussed one more article couple of days ago only regarding GDP, and there itself I told you the GDP growth rate slowdown is a cause of concern. Again, there are reasons for why there was a slowdown, but in addition to that, now connect the point of GST. The GST is collected based on the sales that is done, based on the sales of the commodities, goods and services, we collect GST. If the GDP growth rate will start slowing down, automatically it will have an impact on GST revenue collection. Point number one. Point number two, not mentioned in the article, but I will add it because it was there in the newspapers. In the last 1 month, there is a huge issue of tax evasion. Please remember, there is a huge issue of tax evasion under the goods and services tax. In fact, when the tax reforms are implemented by the government, one of the points that the government tries to say is, we will ensure there is no tax evasion. But despite introducing GST, there is a huge amount of tax evasion. Multiple people or multiple taxpayers have found to have evaded taxes, show cause notices have been sent. So, there is a loophole in the GST then. There are certain loopholes in the GST. We need to address these particular loopholes which are present in the GST. Done. So these are the two very important points I want to discuss in the context of GST receipts here. Beyond that, lot of data is given as to which state has collected how much, etc., etc. You do not worry about that. Month to month data will keep on changing. So assignment number 21, consider the following statements regarding GST. There are 3 statements which I have given. How many of the above statements are true? What is the right option? Please do let me know in the comment section. And if you want to know the right answer, please wait till the next session that I will hold. I will tell you the right answer in that session. Okay, the next article, right? Congress in Himachal Pradesh set to prune government subsidies. What is the idea here? The state government of Himachal Pradesh has announced certain reforms. Now some of you might be thinking, what is the relation of this article? It is a state government matter. My dear, very often there is a discussion regarding revdi culture in India. That is the subsidies which are provided by the government, either by the central government or by the state government, which is going to lead to fiscal profligacy, financial issues of the central government as well as the state government, etc. Now the Himachal state government, Himachal Pradesh state government has announced certain reforms which you can use to improve the quality of your answer. For example, if I ask you, should free electricity, free water be given to every household? Underline the term every household. Your answer should be no sir, free water and free electricity should not be provided to every household. Essentially meaning there are certain households, let us say poor households, which require this assistance, provide it to such houses. And there are certain rich households which do not require it, cut down the assistance there, collect money for or charges for having provided the services. Same thing is being done by the state government here. For example, have a look at this. The government has stopped providing electricity subsidy to hotels and commercial establishments. Earlier electricity subsidy was provided to these commercial establishments. Now government of India says we will stop it. Have a look at this, we will stop it. In addition to this, they have also decided that in rural areas, those houses which have annual income of over 50,000 rupees, those who will have an annual income of more than 50,000 rupees, now will not be given free of cost drinking water supply. These houses will be asked to pay 100 rupees per month in the form of water supply. Done? So essentially the argument here is rationalization of subsidies. Remember the term, rationalization of subsidies. That is the freebie issues, right? The freebie issue related to subsidies is being addressed by the state government. You can use this as a case study regarding what can be done, how we can rationalize subsidies, etc. Now last article for today, just some information here. Last week also there was an order issued by the government of India in order to provide social welfare for the LGBTQIA community. Now a very big article in fact has been provided in the Hindu newspaper, but very little information is relevant. For example, first one, there are various initiatives of the government wherein food grains are allocated, correct? Food grains are allocated for households. For example, we have Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, under which 5 kgs of free food grain per person who is identified as a beneficiary under this initiative is given per month. Now there have been certain instances where the people who belong to LGBTQIA community have not been issued a ration card, and because of the stigma in the society they have not been issued with the ration card. The central government has issued a directive to the states now. The central government has issued a directive to the states, that is specifically within the central government. Remember the name of the department which is associated with the food subsidy, that is the Department of Food and Public Distribution, DFPD. It has issued a directives to the state government to ensure that if a person is belonging to this community, doesn't matter, we will have to provide a ration card to the person who will be able to get access to food grains. If they belong to a certain household, do not skip such households, provide the ration card to such houses as well, let them get access to ration. That is the first very important point. Second very important point, what if a particular couple is there, right, either lesbian or let's say gay, and one of the person passes away. There have been instances where the other person has not been allowed to claim the body of the partner. Now Government of India has issued a directive. It has issued a directive. If there is no relative who will come and claim the body, please allow the partner to claim the body. Allow the partner to claim the body. That is the second very important announcement, or let us say the reform or the initiative that has been undertaken by the government in the form of a directive. In addition to this, the government also has announced that the healthcare facilities will be provided to the children of these partners. Healthcare facilities have to be provided. We cannot simply, right, exclude such people from getting access to healthcare. So these are some of the things which have been issued in the form of order by Government of India following the Supreme Court of India's order last year to extend the welfare benefits to even the LGBTQIA community. Done? Right. So these are the various important articles as well as the questions related to the articles which have appeared in two newspapers today, the Hindu newspaper as well as Indian Express newspaper. Session is slightly lengthy, bear with me because I have taken multiple articles. The whole objective of the session is to ensure that this will become a one-stop destination for all of your current affairs requirement. So if you are not yet subscribed to this particular channel, please do it right now. Before I wind up the session, again to reiterate, as we are nearing the Teachers' Day, as a gift to all of our aspirants, all the aspirants who are preparing for civil services, please register today itself, and once you register for the next 7 days, whatever classes are there, whatever notes are there, whatever tests are available on a platform will be available to you free of a cost. Do not miss out this opportunity, make the best use of this opportunity. So see you today in the class where I will be discussing, as already mentioned, the subsidies, World Trade Organization and subsidies, the e-rupee system, etc. So that's it from my side today. See you again next time. Thank you. Have a great day.